Would you say you're a visual artist and a ceramicist?
No, I'd say I'm a potter.
A potter?
I'm really comfortable with being like the village potter.
Workshop Wisdom is a series of conversations with fellow makers. We ask them to share their learning and insights about life from the time spent in their workshops. First up, we have Peter Bodenham, the village potter, chatting from his workshop in St.Dogmaels, Wales, a short walk from the home of Hiut Denim. Hi, Peter Bodenham.
Hello.
Hello. So we're here at your workshop. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, your work and your workshop?
So I built the workshop about 25 years ago, but then about 8 years ago I cut a hole in the end so I could sell directly from here. Trained in Cardigan and then I went to London, then sort of came back to the area, then I sort of had an agent in London, but then about 10 years ago or more I started sort of returning to making functional wear, and that's really the focus of what I do now. I do some sort of sculptural painterly sort of vessels, but they're all sort of functional as well.
Would you say you're a visual artist and a ceramicist?
No, I'd say I'm a potter.
A potter?
In some respects it's one of those sort of things within the field. People call themselves different things, don't they, for different reasons, but I'm really comfortable with being like the village potter. Really, that's fine by me.
And how does where you live drift into your work?
Pretty fundamental, really, in the sense of types of glazes. I try and mimic things like the sea, edges of the sea, or things I find like birds' eggs, or the geology, the rocks I collect. I make sort of a bowl with a little handle on it, which is black on the outside, which is, I call it a coracle bowl, so I live right next to the river, which is just sort of there. So that sense of place underpins the work, really, definitely.
Do you have any rules or rituals when working?
I have to have coffee before I start. That's sort of quite a ritual. I drink coffee out of a bowl rather than a mug, and quite often I sit and draw for a little bit. So I might draw what I'm going to make that day, or go through my old sketchbooks if I'm going to be doing something a bit more painterly. I take photographs of the local area, like sides of boats or objects I find from the beach. So sometimes I literally flick through that, even though I've seen them lots of times before. It just sort of gets me into a frame of mind. And then it really sort of has that sort of rhythm of, say, if you're making mugs or bowls or jugs, sort of, they all have their own sort of pace to them. So sometimes I'll just I never make like 100 of the same sort of thing. I tend to sort of do 30 or 40 and then I do something else. So I think there's a pattern there that I don't want to get stale, or I don't want to be in a production mode where I'm not caring about it. Yeah, and there's always punctuated by people coming in, which is quite nice. It's not a completely isolated existence. So customers come in, have a little chat, and I go back to work, which is really nice, actually. I enjoy that sort of those sort of interventions, really. Yeah.
And to see the people that are buying, using your pottery.
Yeah, it's really nice when you
have
repeat customers and sort of say, oh, I use that every day, or that's really, really pleasing. Yeah.
I know we spoke a bit about how where you live, that obviously influences your work, but what other themes, inspirations drift into your work?
I think some sort of things that are very visible, in a sense, like some of the marks I make on the surface of the pots are like experiential sort of feelings of maybe diving in the sea. I mean, I enjoy sea swimming, quite a bit involved with the local surf life-saving club and that culture. So that's really difficult, that's in the work, but it's not visible to anybody. But it's that sense of place or community. But then, as I said, like maybe a gestural mark, it's like a splash or throwing sort of the paintbrush and sort of getting a splatter is very direct sort of influence. But I think, it sounds a bit pompous, but the idea of phenomenology, like this whole thing, the whole phenomena just feeds into the work. So I think that is it. As I say, sometimes I can identify like white lichens I'm trying to sort of mimic on the surface of a pot, and other times it's just very, very diffused, really.
Is there someone that has influenced your work or influenced how you've got to where you've got to?
If you go to art school, it's like a remote form of apprenticeship. You sort of have lots of artists, lots of makers. I remember sort of my tutor from Carmarthen, I was doing like a foundation, he took us to a guy called Walter Keeler on the Borders, Monmouth, and that was like quite a sort of big influence. And also like a local potter, there used to be local potteries and things around here, and there was one at Kippin, and like I say, which he still lives in the village. So that was sort of just seeing, I think when you're a young teenager and you see something, making something and then making a living at it, so that's sort of quite inspiration. But there's a whole raft of like artists, painters, Ben Nicholson or Barbara Hepworth or Ansel Keith. Do you know, it's one of those things about Desert Island Discs who influences you. So it's a real smorgasbord of artists and makers. So yeah, and that could change. That probably change daily in some respects. A guy called Roger Hilton is a not very nice person, but a really interesting artist, I think. William Scott.
The list goes on.
Yeah, it's sort of quite sort of, and it's a real mixture of sculpture and painting and pots. Going to the V&A, I think, I mean, that's something which I always sort of like encourage people to do if they're thinking of doing ceramics, is go to the V&A collection, and just starting at one end and going through, because I went there when I was 17 and I've gone all my life and I still see pots which or sculptures which are sort of really influential. So I think that sort of museums, Pitt Rivers or National Museum of Wales, St. Fagans, all those sorts of really influential. I think those sort of, St. Fagans is lovely because you could see certain objects in their setting in their original context as well.
Wow.
So there's a jug in one of the houses in St. Fagans, and I had to write an article about Dutch designers, but I included that within it to make some sort of connections and parallels. So yeah, I think Dutch, going back to influences, I've always been really interested in Northern European design, more than British design in some respects. So yeah, Dutch design is sort of very innovative, and that blend between fine art design and craft. In Britain we have tended to be, not so much now, it's very liberal now, but tend to be, you're a craftsperson, you're a designer, or you're an artist, and there are very, very clearly defined camps, which I've always liked the fluidity between them, really.
When you're working, do you work in silence, or do you listen to music, listen to a podcast?
I listen to all those, but so definitely I've got the radio on or YouTube on. Podcasts, I'm sort of listening to Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart, I like political podcasts. Listen to novels. Quite like, if you're doing like a solid day's continuous work, I quite like a novel, an audio book. It's just really sort of great, because when you pick up a book, it's like quite an investment in time, isn't there? But with an audio, it's on the background, and then you can dump it if you think, oh, that's no good. And music, which is very much sort of, and that's really eclectic, from Welsh bossa nova to classical to Afrobeats to whatever.
So good.
I think the only thing I don't listen to is country and western. I think that's the only thing where I go, oh, no, that's not for me. Or heavy metal, country and western.
Is there one thing that would make life easier?
I'm not sure if I think making life easy is very good. In some ways, I think you have to be being a potter. There's a slightly masochistic sort of element to it because, be it sort of in firing or mixing your glazes, it can be, things can go wrong. It's always a challenge. I think obviously, there's that thing about making a living. Things would be easier if I had somebody or could pay somebody to do sort of a web shop, which I'm not very good at doing. But then there's something really nice about you having control over what you make, where you sell, how you sell it. But yeah, that was my instant sort of thing. I'm not sure if actually making life easy is an interesting sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess in the challenges there's rewards.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's sort of learning, by mistakes. It's obviously a cliche that, but sometimes serendipitous, happy accidents. Oh my God, that's sort of quite interesting. Or you've ruined something, and then you go, well, I might as well go for it and push something to the extreme. Yeah, I remember watching this sort of TV program about this actor talking about him going into therapy and being really hooked on it because he went to the therapist. He said, I just want to be free. And the therapist went, he said, you have to be very careful about freedom. I think the same sort of thing about, would anything make your life easier? I think the pursuit of that might actually be not that interesting.
Nice. Do you have a quote or a motto that you say to yourself?
All cock-ups into wonderful possibilities.
Stunning.
I usually include an expletive in there, but yeah, I mean, I certainly, try and sort of do that, because I think out of that that's where innovation comes, really.
What advice would you give to another maker?
I think be very truthful to the work. I think if you are truthful to what you want to make, I think the idea of trends, of being on point at certain, I know the whole forecasting industry is very important in certain areas, but I think if you're very sort of genuine and truthful about what you want to make, there'll be other people who sort of connect with that. And there's a sort of a theory called ontology, which means sort of status and quality of objects or things. And I think if you are really engaged, inquisitive about what you're doing, then that sort of that'll be in the objects. So I mean,
your frequency.
There's a sort of that theory where if you're looking at a portrait, it's a really powerful portrait, the eyes seem to follow you around the room. Well, you could say that's got a high ontological status because the artist has really worked very hard to imbue that object with lots of positive qualities. So I think, because if you're chasing something which isn't really what you want to make, then it'll all be hollow, I think. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.